Craig Powers has been with the Polk County Sheriff's Office for 19 years. He's currently a sergeant. During his employment, he has worked as a patrol deputy, fugitive warrant and robbery detective, as well as a supervisor in Eagle Lake. He is currently the training coordinator and range master for the Polk County Sheriff's Office's training section. He is a member of the Mounted Enforcement Unit and is a sniper and team leader for the Polk County Sheriff's Office SWAT team. Our other speaker, Rian Shea, has been employed with the Polk County Sheriff's Office since 1999. During his career, he's worked as a detective in the crime suppression, gang, intelligence, and homicide units. Rian has been a member of the Polk County Sheriff's Office SWAT team for 11 years, where he served as SWAT leader and explosive breacher. In September, he was promoted to lieutenant, where he currently supervises a night patrol shift in Central District, which encompasses Winter Haven and Auburndale area. And he is the assistant tactical commander for the Emergency Operations Group. Rian is married to possibly the world's greatest wife.
I thought I was.
Please help me welcome Sergeant Craig Powers and Lieutenant Shea.
Good morning, everybody. Let's try it again. Can you hear me? Seems like it's very low. I'm at the yelling this thing, I guess. And I thought I was married to the world's greatest wife. So I'm going to call her later and tell her I am. So we'll have a debate later on who's got the best wife. But again, good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to come on behalf of our boss, Sheriff Grady Judd. We appreciate your attendance this morning. We appreciate the administration for allowing us to come and speak to you this morning on some very important topics. In the criminal justice field, obviously you had a presentation earlier about the Highway Patrol and give you some of the different job aspects that they do in their particular agency. And at the Sheriff's Office, we as well have different job fields. I currently now help supervise our training unit, which is catered to training all the deputy sheriffs for the Sheriff's Office and some of the smaller agencies that use our facility and train under us. As a little bit larger agency, sometimes we have more resources than the smaller police departments. But in addition, in the criminal justice field, to training your own people, a good agency will also want to go out into the public and use your skills and the information that you have as a professional agency to speak to the public about certain topics. And so Lieutenant Shea and I have gone out in the public and we've taught different training aspects, and one of the most popular is active shooter response. We teach our officers and deputies how to respond to an active shooter event as a person responding that's going to help out. But the citizens of the county in any given area, there's information that they should have as well on what they should do before law enforcement arrives, should they be involved in a potentially active shooter event. This also happens at schools. If you've paid attention to the news and TV and that kind of stuff, active shooter events are happening, seems to be more and more frequent these days. Would you agree? And we've seen over the years they've happened at schools, malls, public events, businesses, churches, anywhere you can think of the venue, these things have happened. And so it's been our goal, at least in this county, to get out there in the public and educate as many businesses, churches, and Ryan and I have talked to a lot of different businesses and give them information for some basic response on what to do should they find themselves in a potential active shooter situation. So our presentation today is going to be based off that precept, and to give you all, and then you can turn around as the future leaders. I want you to go back to your specific areas, whether you're in a school or another organization, and go back and help teach this back, because you're all going to be doing this one day, hopefully, if this is the career path that you want to do. And so we're going to give you some basic information today, and we hope that you go back and share it with your administrators, your school, ask what kind of programs that you have, and so we're going to go from there. Lieutenant, you want to say something or adjust yourself?
I'm good. Let's get started.
So we'll get into the presentation. All right, so active shooter. A lot of people sometimes get this somewhat confused, and it's probably based on the media. So I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say a husband is upset with his wife, even though she's not the greatest wife in the world like he's got. But, you know, and she's at work that day, and he decides that's the day that he wants to go do harm to her. So whether he's going to kill her or just stab her or whatever, he goes to her place of business, and she's the target. Now, he may have to go through one or two people to get to her, but the intended target is to do harm to his relationship, the wife or a girlfriend, whatever. The media, a lot of times, and if he starts shooting at that place, that business that she's working at, a lot of times the media will just label that as an active shooter. But in the context that we're going to talk about today, that's not the active shooter that we're talking about. The active shooter that we're talking about, or assailant, because they don't always have to bring a gun. They could bring a knife or a dangerous weapon and try to harm a lot of people. But they're really not selective in their victims. The active shooter that we're speaking today in the context of how you should respond, they're lazy. They're not looking for this gentleman or this young lady up here. They just want to kill as many people as possible in a short amount of time as possible. And they're looking for an area that's confined or open, but there's a lot of population there. This forum is be a good example, right? If someone were to run through this door here, you could close your eyes and point a gun and start shooting. You're probably going to hit somebody, right? Because there's just enough people in here. But that's what they're after. They're looking to just kill as many people as possible in a short amount of time possible and make a statement. So the definition that you see up top there was pretty much coined by the Department of Homeland Security, who started putting out this information. And it's something that we can all agree to across the nation. And you may have a little bit of different interpretation, but it's really an individual or group of people, because there has been multiple assailants in some case studies. But they're killing or attempting to kill people in a confined or populated area. The population is what they're after. We can almost take confined out because there have been some open air areas in some of the case studies. It doesn't always have to be in a small room or something like that. If there's a group of people where someone could shoot at them, that's what they're after. But they're not there for one or two people. They're there, again, there's no selection of their victims. These situations evolve very rapidly. They can happen at any time or place, like I alluded to earlier. They've happened at churches. They've happened at malls. They've happened at businesses. Anywhere you can think of where people populate and congregate, these people have used those areas to come in and cause harm. And again, in most cases, no pattern or method to the selection of victims. Now, they do have some common motives. They may choose that place because they know that at a college or a school, there's going to be a lot of people. Does that make sense? They're not there for one student, not there for one person. They're there, they pick that particular place because they know there's probably going to be a lot of people there at one given time. But anger, workplace violence. They know that, maybe they got fired in some of these situations, and they want to go back and harm everybody else because now they've lost their job. They may not be able to pay their bills. They don't believe that they're going to be able to live. And so they're mad at the company or they're mad at the organization, and I'll pay them back, and they'll go there and try to kill everybody that they can before they finish up. So the place may be selective, but they're not after just one or two people usually. Revenge. Exactly what I was talking about. Someone's done something wrong to them, and they feel like they want to go back and pay it back to the person. Ideology. Can anybody tell me what ideology is? Anybody in the first row? Ideology, ma'am. Well, that's true. That's one of their motives, I would say. But what is ideology? Why would... Yeah, it's a belief system, right? Can you imagine what person believes that because someone done them wrong, or some organization, that it would be okay, they've justified in their mind, it's okay to go and kill a bunch of people? Well, we see that in what? ISIS, terrorists? That's ideology. Whatever their belief system is, it's okay to go and kill a large group of people. How do you deal with that person? Do you think of someone who believes it's okay to kill a large group of people because of any given reason, that should you be confronted with them, you'll be able to beg them and convince them to stop killing people? Probably not going to happen, is it? Not going to be able to reason with a person like that. Unrelated mental illness. When you look at the case studies around the country for the people that have come in and committed active shooter events, you could probably have one common denominator, and that's some mental illness that's either untreated or they're just dealing with stuff. It just seems to be a common theme when you look at these cases. Lieutenant, next. All right, so the FBI, premier law enforcement agency in the criminal justice world, They did a study from about 2000 to 2013, and they studied over 160 case studies of active shooter events. And they come up with some statistics, which the FBI is really great for. And so some of them are right here. Out of that, all the case studies they did over that period, in 6.4 active shooter incidents per year between 2000 and 2006. So they kind of split it up in half. The first half of the study, they looked at, you can expect over an average of a year, 6.4 active shooter events in a year. And then what does it do after that? Second bullet up there. In the second half of their study, from 2007 on up to 2013, it rose to 16.4 active shooter events per year. On the rise, right? More and more people are doing these events, going and shooting up places and trying to kill people. Therefore, that tells us what? You need to be some kind of preparedness. It's not going away in Craig Powers' opinion. This world's not going to get any better tomorrow or next week. We're going to continue to see these. It's almost so common nowadays, we hear it in the news, and then by next week, we've already forgot about it. That's how common it seems to be these days, in my opinion. So in those studies that they did, and 70% of the shootings occurred either at a commercial location or an educational environment. Colleges, schools, wherever it's at. Educational environment. That's a pretty good percentage. Well over half, right? 45.6 were at a commercial location and 24.3 were educational environment. Again, businesses or schools. That's generally where these things have occurred. Next slide, please. So here's some more facts. Total deaths, 486 between 2000 and 2013, the first half, not including the shooters. That's talking about the people that they killed, not the shooters that killed themselves or got killed by the police. All but 6 shootings involve male shooters. So some people don't believe that females will be willing to kill a bunch of people, but they are. Only 2 shootings involve more than 1 shooter, plural, or two more people. These records were done in 2013, but just what? This last year, San Bernardino, that's a husband and wife team, right? That's plural. When duration of the incidents were available, 69% were over in 5 minutes or less, folks. 5 minutes or less. Why is that important? We're going to talk about it further in detail. So law enforcement, the good guys right here with a badge, coming to save the day. On a very good day, by the time the call gets received to 911, the 911 operator transfers to dispatch. Dispatch initializes troopers, deputy, officer, whoever's close by, and we get to go moving there, lights and siren, trying to blow our engine up to get down there to help out. You're looking at probably 6 to 8 minutes on a good day to get there and then try to figure out where to go and where this person's at causing harm. Statistically, it's over for the cops to ever get there. We're doing our best to come there to save the day, but statistically, it's long done before the cops ever arrive on scene to help out. That tells us one thing, folks. You're going to have to be prepared as potential victims to do something in that interim between the time the first bullet's fired until the cops can get there to help out. In my opinion, that's where we're lacking across the nation. You've already seen the statistics. They're going to keep becoming more and more frequent. But what are we doing as a nation and the civilians? The police have been training from day one to handle these situations. But what are the civilian population going to get off their butts and start doing something to have themselves prepared before the cops get there? That's me and Ryan's mission, to do as much as we can, at least in Polk County, to help prepare people, whether it be students, business owners, churches. We've talked to all of them. We're trying to spread this message. You've got to do something if you should find yourself in one of these situations, and we're going to allude to what we believe to be basic tenets that you should be prepared for. 60% of the shooting incidents were over, again, prior to the arrival of law enforcement. Statistically, that's what you can expect. Sometimes we get lucky, and maybe the cop's right around the corner. But statistically, when you look at it across the board, it's going to take us a little bit of time to get there, and the people have to be prepared. We're going to give you what those tenets are. Next slide, please. Most active shooter situations are unpredictable. They all evolve very quickly. Because these incidents are going to be over very quickly, you got to be prepared. Exactly what we've been talking about. It's been estimated, if you look at the statistics between the time the first shot's fired and last shot's fired and across the spectrum of these, that every 15 seconds another person's being killed. Okay, well, we don't have the luxury of 15 seconds, folks, as far as the cops go and trying to get there. Because I can tell you right now, if I got a gun and this pistol, which I'm good with, I can fire 6 shots in about 2 seconds and hit my target. That's way less than 15 seconds in my book, right? Thank you. Now I can hold it down here instead of up in here. We don't have 15 seconds.
I'm awake.
Yeah. You know, every time the trigger is fired, somebody else is potentially losing their life. And it doesn't take a thought pattern to do this right here and squeeze a trigger. That's about 3 pounds of pressure, or depending on the trigger system, 5 pounds of pressure to pull that trigger. And somebody else is in a populated area, somebody's going to lose their life potentially when a bullet strikes them. So very imperative that people that are getting shot at do something immediately, and obviously we're trying to get there as fast as we can to help out. Now, where we try to mitigate this factor on these statistics is at the bottom bullet point there. Could you turn it down just a hair, sir? I've got it like way out here. Preparedness and awareness. That's going to be the keys to success on trying to mitigate the amount of lives that are lost in one event. Being prepared as you can, knowing the tenets that we're going to speak about earlier, and just being aware of your surroundings. Wherever you go. Again, we're going to talk about in this setting and maybe a school setting, but everything that we talk about today, you're going to be able to carry with you from now on out. Whether you're at the mall, when you're at church on Sunday, wherever you're at, you're going to be able to use this information and be prepared and be aware of your surroundings and knowing if something's out of place and being prepared to handle that situation. Next slide, sir.
I'm not just a show pony. I do get to talk in part of this presentation, so this is my part. We're going to cover a few incidents that have happened throughout the country. One of the major incidents that this country is aware of, and obviously it happened just over 9 years ago now, was the incident known as the Virginia Tech Massacre. Cho Sung-Wee was a senior English major at Virginia Tech. He had been at the school for 4 years, obviously. He's getting ready to graduate. We're talking about the month of April. For a long period of time, he suffered from mental illness. He had to get treatment a couple of years prior to this incident actually taking place. Obviously, it did not take to him. So he had to fight with this illness over and over. But he also was fighting demons inside his head that said he was not happy with life, and because he was not happy with life, he was going to make other people miserable as well. So he started having these fantasies and seeing everything being sensationalized on TV about these mass shootings. So when he started seeing these, he started putting these fantasies into play. He wanted to do something rather than just sit on the sidelines and watch these things from happening. So what he ended up doing, here you're going to have to. What he ended up doing was purchasing a firearm over the internet. Back in 2007, you could do that. You could purchase a firearm over the internet. However, you had to go to a gun store to pick it up. So he goes and he picks up his first gun, and he's now got an actual gun in his hand. And he's realizing this is for real. I'm going to go to a range. He's going to go to a Walmart, and he's going to purchase 50 rounds of ammunition. He goes to the range, and he fires his first gun in his entire life. And he realizes that is some power. He felt that power, and he needed more of it. So he continued to go to the range, and he kept practicing. But now the fantasy is starting to grow within him. He realizes if he's going to live up to the fantasy that he has, he's going to need to purchase another firearm to make this happen. So he goes out and he buys a second gun, and he's going to the range more and more, and he's shooting this gun. How many of us in this room have been to a private range? Private indoor range, okay? So we all know what I'm talking about when I say you got the multiple lanes together, you know, and everybody has their own shooting stall, this, that, and the other. So when they have these multiple lanes, this is your lane, this is your lane. Well, Cho Sung-Wee decides that he is going to buy out all 10 lanes of this private range. Strange enough, right? In its own right. Why are you going to take out all 10 lanes and nobody can be near you? Well, what it turns out that he was doing was when he took reservation on all 10 of these lanes, he was going on the other side of the stanchion where you normally stand to fire your rounds, and he was laying targets on the ground. Simple enough, but strange. Do you think anybody reported that information to law enforcement? No. Here he is, he's laying targets down on the ground, and he's leaving just enough space to where he is walking in between these targets, and he is shooting the targets while they're on the ground. Bang, 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 bang. Strange enough, right? No one called law enforcement to say, hey, somebody might want to check out why this guy is shooting targets while they're on the ground. That never took place. He is now beginning to put his plan into place. This is where what Sergeant Powers was talking about, where people are preparing and planning. If the suspect is preparing to kill you, then you have got to do something to prepare to live. You have got to start taking some initiative in your own life to prepare to survive this type of incident. These people are preparing to kill you. That's what they're there to do. They're there to kill you. So he planned, he prepared. So much so, the day before the incident, he goes to Norris Hall with a chain and a lock, and he locks one of the doors shut. A janitor doing his job on this particular morning sees the chain lock, kind of looks at it and says, huh, that's kind of strange. Goes back to doing his job. He obviously figures someone put it there for a reason, so I don't need to be bothered by that. I'm just going to move on. Little did he know that Cho Sung-Wee was in the room next door, and he was waiting. He was waiting to see if he would get any reaction or how long it would take for someone to notice. And if someone noticed, how long it would take for them to respond. Well, guess what? No one responded after an hour. By the time the janitor came back through an hour later, the chain and the lock were gone. That was a test run for Cho Sung-Wee. He tested his plan. Again, he's planning and he's preparing to carry out his fantasy. Go to the next slide. So the morning of April 16th comes around. It's about 7:15 in the morning. Cho Sung-Wee is in his dormitory, but he needs to go and check his mail for whatever reason. Nobody knows why, but he goes in there to check his mail. And part of this is he doesn't have access to this building until about 7:30 in the morning. But he gains access at about 7:15 because there's another student coming through exercising. It's believed that when he enters into this, he's armed, and he goes into the dormitory, and he struggled with relationships. He was very much a loner, and when he goes on his rants about why he does this, he blames not only Christianity, but he also blames women. There's a lot of you in here. He blames women for not getting that traditional college experience. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We got some high school kids in here, so I can't really elaborate, but y'all know what I'm talking about. So he blames women for not getting that traditional college experience. And he was infatuated with a particular student in this dormitory. He goes to this student, who happens to be a freshman, goes to her room, and he shoots her. A male student who happens to be a senior in this particular dormitory hears the shooting, goes running over there to see what happens. Cho shoots and kills him. This is all about 7:15 in the morning. So you have a double shooting inside a dormitory at Virginia Tech University at 7:15 in the morning. For those of you that know the end of this story, what does Virginia Tech University do? Classes continue, right? School goes on. You have a double shooting on your campus, double homicide on your campus, and you allow classes to continue. This was one of the main reasons that Virginia Tech was sued, is that they did allow classes to continue this particular day. So classes continue, the campus isn't placed on lockdown, law enforcement is conducting their investigation into a double shooting in a dormitory. So about 9:40 in the morning, Cho Sung-Hui enters into Norris Hall. He chain locks the doors. Why does he chain lock the doors? 2 reasons. So no one can get in and no one can get out. So we're talking about April in a college setting. He's a senior. A lot of the classes that he's walking around outside of, they're seniors in these classes, and they're getting ready to graduate. You're getting ready to finish up the semester. The semester's almost over, but he's pacing around in the hallway, similar to what I'm doing right now, okay? So he's pacing around the hallway, and students are starting to take notice of the guy wearing all black out in the hallway. What's that guy doing? Who's he looking for? He shouldn't be looking for anybody. It's April. He shouldn't be looking for a classroom. Well, all of a sudden, he appears in front of the class, and he shoots the instructor in the head, dead, right in front of everybody in the classroom. When he fires off that gunshot in the room, what does every student in that classroom do? They all get down on the floor and start hiding or trying to hide. What did he train to do? He trained to shoot people that were on the ground. So he methodically walked in between each row of desks and started shooting people. He trained and he prepared, which is the reason that we are here today to tell you that you also need to train and prepare. If they're doing it, you need to do it. In an 11-minute time frame and in 2 separate classrooms, Cho killed 30 people in 11 minutes. He fired 174 rounds from 2 handguns, not a rifle with multiple rounds inside it. 174 rounds in 11 minutes. That means he had to change magazines. He had there was opportunities there, but he was prepared to deal with what the situation was in front of him. And because that he was prepared, this is the largest mass shooting in U.S. history. Another incident that is closer to us. It doesn't have the large casualty count, but this is something that is near to us. Happened about 1.5 years ago now at Florida State University at Strozer Library. Myron May was a graduate of Florida State University, and he left Florida to go attain his law degree and was actually a lawyer. But he started having mental breakdowns. He started to go into some sort of psychosis, and he couldn't snap out of the reality that was going on within him. He believed that the government was targeting him. He believed that they were hitting him with microwaves and they were making him do things that he didn't want to do. There was a lot of things that were going on with him. So because of his increased paranoia, he figured he had to go back to where he believed it all started, which was at Florida State University. Why he chose midnight at the Florida State Library, who knows? But what does that tell us? That these types of incidents can happen at any time or any place. Just because this is an academic environment doesn't mean it's going to happen during normal school hours. This was a library at midnight. There were over 300 students in the library at the time of the shooting. And he walked in there with a .380 caliber handgun, very small caliber handgun, but he was intent on killing people. That was his intent when he walked into that library. If any of you have ever seen the video, Florida State finally released the video of inside the library. He can be seen walking around inside the library, and he gets stopped by a turnstile. Why he decided that he was going to stop at that turnstile and not jump over it and maybe wreak more havoc with inside the library itself, only he knows. But that was part of his increasing paranoia. He was probably thinking the government is, stopping me from getting in there, so I'm just going to hang out in the lobby. So he starts firing off his gun inside the lobby. In the video, what you don't see is people running around. They actually start going in the direction of the gunfire, and there are people walking by him. Why he doesn't shoot these people, we'll never know. Because ultimately, law enforcement was contacted. Mr. May walked outside, and he was confronted by law enforcement, ordered to drop his weapon. He didn't, and he was shot and killed by the responding officer. But here's another case of mental illness gone awry. Thank you. The most recent well-known college campus shooting is Umpqua Community College in Oregon. There's a particular reason that I like this event to talk about it is this was a student who went to his own classroom and committed this atrocity. These were people that he sat in class with over and over and over again, and he ultimately went to the classroom and decided to take people's life. According to his mother, he suffered from Asperger's syndrome. Even though that he had a form of mental illness, his mother did not want him to feel isolated, so they had an infatuation with going to a gun range, and they owned multiple guns in their house. And they would go to the range often and shoot and practice. Ultimately, Christopher Harper Mercer here got a letter from Umpqua Community College saying that he needed to pick his grades up. How many of y'all have gotten that letter? I know I did. Needed to pick your grades up. Otherwise, he was going to lose scholarship. So when that happens, an anger begins to stir inside him. I'm going to show them. Part of this, though, is the night before this particular incident happens, he gets into a chat room and he starts talking to people who ultimately have similar beliefs as he does. And he starts telling people, hey, if you go to school in the Northwest, you might not want to go to school tomorrow. And he starts talking about him wanting to shoot people at the school. He's discussing it with people in a chat room. Do you think anyone called law enforcement? Obviously, they don't know where he is. He didn't say, he just said the Northwest. But do you think one person contacted law enforcement? No. What ultimately ended up happening was people were encouraging him. They didn't think it was for real. They started telling him ways he could make this event better. Hey, get everybody together in the middle of the room and you'll be able to shoot them easier. That's all right in the transcripts from the chat room he was in. So I implore you, if you enter into any of these chat rooms or you're on social media or whatever, and you have someone talking about one of these events, you need to call law enforcement right away. Allow us to do our job. Because you don't want to be the person that we all see anytime one of these events takes place that gets on the news and says, well, I didn't think he was for real. I mean, I was talking to him in the chat room, but I just thought, it was just for fun. You always see that person on the news. Don't be that person. You want to be the person on the news that said, I contacted law enforcement and I stopped this guy from killing a whole lot of people. Because it could be somebody that you know and love that could be where that person is going. So ultimately, he goes into his classroom, he fires off a warning shot, and he tells everybody, gather up in the back of the room. Somebody shared that knowledge with him on the chat room the day before. So he gathers everybody up and he starts shooting people one at a time. But he's shooting them multiple times. He brought with him 5 handguns and a rifle, but he only used the handguns in this particular incident. The incident lasted 10 minutes. It was 6 minutes before the first law enforcement officers arrived on scene. 6 minutes. Sergeant Powers gave you some information earlier where 69% of these incidents were over in 5 minutes or less. Well, this one lasted, it was 6 minutes before law enforcement got on scene for this one. Ultimately, he was engaged by 2 plainclothes detectives that arrived on the scene. They began exchanging gunfire. He was hit in the side. Ultimately, he retreated into the classroom and he committed suicide. The reason that we shared this particular incident, other than the fact it's the most recent large casualty incident at a college, talking about the social media aspect of it. Obviously, social media is rampant. We implore you, if you get information on anything like this, that you come forward to law enforcement immediately. We have ways of tracking people down that start talking like this. Whether they're serious or not, we need to investigate them.
All right, so by now, I hope you can see the seriousness of the situation. We've given you some information about active shooters, statistics, and we've given you a couple pointed case studies. So now let's talk about what we're going to do to be prepared for one of these individuals should they come to where we're at. We're going to show you a video first. You're a visual learner like I am. And then we're going to break it down again verbally and talk about the tenets of what you should do as a potential victim and how you should respond. So the Department of Homeland Security has come up with a basic plan. It's now widely recognized across the United States, and it's very simple. It's called run, hide, or fight. Has anybody heard that before? Okay. You're going to see the basic tenets today. We're going to go over it one by one and then and how it applies. So we'll watch this about a 5-minute video, and then we'll recap on the video.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
All right, we're going to go over this again, but I don't have that Hollywood voice of run, hide, and... So the first tenet again, the simplest one is run, escape, evacuate, whatever terminology you want to use, but it's very simple. If you have an opportunity to escape through an exit and you're close by, you should do nothing else other than that. Get out of there. We're trying to get as many people away from the situation as possible. You know, you could have the best security measures in the world, but I don't know that you could ever prevent one of these events from happening. If someone is intent on doing something, just like Lieutenant Shea kind of described these 3 individuals that did this, if they really want to do this and they've planned and trained it out, they're going to find a way to get there. The best that we can hope for is to try to mitigate what happens after they start the event. And trying to get as many people away from there as possible, if the opportunity exists, is what we're after right off the bat. With that said, when you're doing that, obviously, as you're going out, you warn other people, don't go in there. There's somebody killing a bunch of people. You know, don't tell everybody else, don't go in there. Have an escape route and plan in mind. Okay, so how many of you ever go to a new restaurant or a place or a store and you look for those exit signs because they're in every single building by law, right? Looking it out when you go to a restaurant. All right, something happens in here, even a robbery or something. How am I going to get out of here? How am I going to get out of the way? Fire, you know. Having that escape route already in mind, especially if you go to the same place every day, whether it be a school, You know, if you're going to the same church all the time, you know how are you going to get out of there if something happens in a particular area? You need to have that already in your mind so you're not trying to figure this stuff out while there's gunshots and screaming going on. You're not going to be able to think fast enough. So having that preset in your mind is what you'd look for. You're going to have to evacuate regardless if others agree to follow. So there's two sides of that coin. There's going to be people around you, no matter where you're at, that may have some physical limitations or whatever. So don't only think of yourself. You need to try to help others get out as possible. Hey, come on, we got to go. But there will be a group of people or a percentage of people when induced with extreme fear or stress that will just freak out and freeze. And they'll just be sitting there, with that OMG look on their face. Is this really happening? Hey, come on, we got to go. But if they sit there and just freeze up, you're going to have to get out of there. If you remain behind, you just might as well count yourself as potentially one of the victims, okay? So you try to help as many as you can, but if someone is just in a frozen state, get out of there anyway. Hopefully they'll figure it out. Leave your belongings behind. Now, if you got it right next to you, obviously you're gonna go with you, but don't go 2 doors down to grab your briefcase, your purse, your backpack, school books. Get out of there. There's no statistics where the active shooter rummaged through someone's purse on the way of killing people. It just doesn't happen. They're not going to look in your cell phone or grab your personal belongings. They're there to kill people. Help others escape. Keep your hands visible. That's helpful to us. As you're running out, remember, we're running in. And we're trying to process who might be the bad person here, who's doing all this crime. But if you got your hands up, that's easy for us to figure out that you're not, you don't have a gun in your hand getting ready to kill more people. So we're going to try to get to that person. And don't drop your cell phone on the way. If you do, don't pick it up. Keep going. Follow the instructions of any police officers. Don't, hey, well, I think I should go this way. If they tell you go behind them, just keep in that direction, listen to them, and follow their direction. Do not attempt to move wounded people. Okay, that's a personal decision that you're going to have to make. But why are we telling you that as a concept? If someone has been shot and you're on your way out and they're in the middle of the floor, and you and another person spend an additional 2 or 3 minutes trying to help that person up, and they're dead weight at that point. They're just, they're sagging. They may not be able to help themselves. Understand that 2 more people may lose their life. Okay, that's a hard decision, and that's something you'd have to internalize and decide on your own. And you may say, the way I was brought up, my religious beliefs, I'm going to try to help this person even if it means potentially dying. But just understand, the more people that stop and try to help the wounded initially, the numbers are going to continue to rise of the people that are being killed during the event, okay? When you get to a safe place, or wherever that be, into hiding, which we'll discuss in the next slide, or outside, try to get on your phone and dial 911 and update the operator, dispatcher, with the information that you might have regarding the shooter, if you have it. If you don't have any information, don't call 911. Just say, I was able to get out of the building, and I have nothing else to offer. They understand that somebody else is going to have more important information. But if you saw the shooter down the hallway or something like that, you would call in and give that information if you have it. All right, so if evacuating is not an option, maybe you realize if I try to get out, I'm going to have to go past the shooter, or I'm just kind of boxed in. The next option is hiding. With that said, you're obviously looking for a place that you could potentially lock the door. That would be best circumstances. However, you don't want to run down the hallway thinking that, well, if I could just get to this closet down there, I know it's lockable, but you can get to another area, get in there and get in a safe place. Because the second tenet is probably as equally important as the first. Even if you can get to a locked door, you need to barricade that door with something behind it if you have that opportunity. You stack stuff against the door, anything that you can to prevent the person from trying to push the door open easily. Again, let's go back to how the description and definition of an active shooter, right? They're lazy. It's the only thought pattern they want is to point a gun and pull the trigger. There's nowhere in the statistics where they brought a battle axe with them and they laid their gun down and tried to chop a door down just to see if they could get on the other side and kill some people. That's not the way they function. If they get to a doorway and they have to do a lot of fuss with it, they're going to continue on. Hopefully the next door, next classroom down there, they can kill more people, okay? So barricade that door with shelves, desks, tables, anything that you can to shove in front of the door. That's what we're looking for, okay? Get away from windows, cover them, close them. blinds, whatever you got, curtains. If you have that opportunity, immediately try to get that done. Shut the lights off, get away from the windows just in case they're shooting wildly. You don't want a bullet to just come through there and arbitrarily hit you. But you're trying to make it look like, you don't want the shooter to take notice of that area. So if the blinds are closed, the lights are off, they may assume that no one's in that room, and why would they waste time to try to go in there? Hopefully they'll go down the hallway and look for some other place to shoot people. Okay, find a closest location to hide in. Cover versus concealment. So as a sniper, a bush for me could be concealment, right? Someone couldn't see me. But if someone shot in that bush, it's not going to stop a bullet. So cover would be behind an oak tree. An oak tree or something with thickness could potentially stop a small bullet like a pistol. So you're looking for, the best thing is something that could seal you and also provide cover. In other words, a bullet may not go through it. Desks, chairs, anything that a bullet would have to pass through before it hits you. Anything that you can get behind. Because even if it's just plastic, when a bullet hits something, it's going to start destroying that bullet and tearing it up. So if it does make it through and hit you, it's not going to be as bad as just a straight bullet dead on. Okay, at some point, whether you're on the phone to 911 or you're in hiding, you're going to put that phone to silent and try to be quiet. That's not the time in hiding to start updating your Facebook page, folks. Updating your status. I'm in bad shape here. That's not the time. But you eventually got to shut that phone down, and hopefully you don't be talking. Even if you're on with 911, you eventually got to say, hey, I've got to stop talking. I think he's right outside the door. You do not want to draw attention to the area that you're trying to hide in. Okay? Here's another rough one, just like not moving wounded people. If you're inside that door and you've already barricaded that door, someone else might have been in the restroom and on the way back to the classroom or wherever you're hiding and saying, let me in. You don't want to take that, especially if you've got 5 or 6 people. Again, you don't want to risk the numbers over one person. And that sounds kind of callous. And again, that's a decision that you may have to make. But understand, if you open that door and the active shooter is right next door, close by, he may make it into that room as well, and all of you could potentially lose your life. So think about that, and especially ahead of time, and what would you do in that particular situation? Next slide, please. All right, worst case scenario. Obviously you're going to try to evacuate first. If that's not available, you're going to try to hide. But you may be in a position where when this thing starts, you're not going to have time to run and hide, and you may not have time to evacuate. You may be confronted with that act. Somebody eventually is going to get confronted with the active shooter because they're shooting people, right? There'll be one person that will see him first, and that may be you. What you do at that point is crucial. This is your last option. This is to live. You can stand there and take it like a man or a woman and take your chances and see if you die or not, or you can actually do something about it, and that's fight back. This is where the most crucial point of what we all need to do as citizens around this country, and we're starting to do it. You see it on the airplane during 9/11 attacks. It took them a while to get into gear, but they finally said, we're going to make an attack on this person. They waited a little bit too long, and that plane went down the field in Pennsylvania anyway. But they eventually said, we got to do this, let's roll. And they went up there. Can you imagine if they'd done that maybe 20 minutes before and took that chance? When your life's confronted, you're going to have to do something immediately. When you do it, you're going to fight back. You're going to be an aggressive. Now, I wear a gun every day. But I can tell you, and my family will tell you, I'm not an aggressive person. I'm pretty laid back. Nothing rattles me that much. I've been in the military for 27 years. I've got 4 combat tours. I'm pretty level. It takes a while for me to get elevated up. But I can tell you right now, if I have to save your life or somebody else's or my own in the field as a law enforcement officer, I'll flip a switch. And I'll go to work and I'll use this gun where it's meant to. Other than that, I have no desire to hurt anybody. I've never had to shoot at anybody with this gun. But I can tell you right now, if I have to, I will flip that switch and I'll do what is required of me, especially as a sniper. Same thing. Most of my job is just to observe things and feedback to the commander. But I know one day there may be a chance where somebody's doing something that they're going to hurt somebody and I may have to shoot that person. I don't want to, but I will if I have to. That's the place that you're going to need to go at this point, because we're all average just citizens. We don't think about every day, what if I have to attack somebody who's trying to attack me? But you need to internalize and think about it ahead of time. What would I do in that situation? Many of you may have other sisters and brothers or family members, and some of you here are old enough to even have kids. If someone were to harm your child, or for those of you that are fairly young, if someone were to hurt your mother right in front of you, what would you do to that person? You would protect your mother, or you would protect your child, or your siblings, your family members at all costs probably, wouldn't you? That's the place that you got to go right here. It's life or death. It's win or lose. Losing means you're not here no more. Your family's going to be without you. We don't have it up here, but statistically, on those FBI statistics that I showed you, there's been a great percentage. Those who fought back were able to stop that assailant, that shooter, before law enforcement arrived. How many of you remember a few years ago, some of you are fairly young, but over in Arizona, there was a Congresswoman Giffords that was holding a political rally in a supermarket parking lot. And a guy went in there and started shooting people. Yeah, he killed a few people, but they jumped on him. They had no weapons, and they jumped on him and held him down till the police got there. That's just one example. There's plenty of case studies that we could show you where statistically, if you fight back, you can win in these situations. But you got to act aggressively. You got to go after that person. You got to commit to your actions. The more people that are able to jump on that person immediately, the better it's going to be. Ryan and I went to a class where we practiced that. We had little paint bullets or the plastic BBs, and we had the person said, when you get ready, start shooting people, and all the rest of you, I want you to run at him, even though he's going to bring a gun up, start shooting at you, jump on him and grab him. And we did that, and that person never hit anybody. That's the way it could wind up with real bullets. Half the class jumped on this guy and held him down. Yelling aggressively. You got to throw items. If you're close by, no matter what it is, bottle of water, a pencil, a pen, a stapler, whatever you can get. Yeah. I mean, this little item right here, the clicker to change the slides, how much physical damage could this instrument do if I threw it at this young man right here? Physically. Not much, right? But I guarantee if I stood back like there and wound up like a baseball player and threw it at him, what do you think his natural reaction would be? He's probably going to do something like that, right? Maybe deflect it. Even though he knows it's not going to cause that much damage. The people that are shooting people are human, just like we all are. Your body just reacts to certain things without you thinking about it. And the natural reaction for someone who's being yelled at or something thrown at them is to kind of wince or pull back. That might be the last bullet in the gun, fired into the floor, fired into the ceiling, or fired at something else. So you're yelling, trying to get their attention off of doing this to something else, distract them, that last bullet being fired, and aiming and firing. You're just trying to do something, interrupt that pattern. And throwing something may be what it takes to prevent them from shooting at another person. You got to commit to your actions. Go back real quick. Because your life depends on it. Okay? Once you start, you don't walk up and just smack them in the face, so that's not going to work. You're just going to tick them off. You got to commit to it and go for it. Next slide, sorry. All right, here's another concept that's widely recognized across the United States. For some of you that are still in high school, you probably would see this terminology more than just run, hide, fight. The video was obviously in a business setting for adults. Most schools have seen this terminology here: ALICE, alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. Very similar to run, hide, fight, just thrown in an acronym. So alert means anything that you can use to alert as many people as possible. For schools, it's the intercom system or an air horn, whatever you can get a hold of that you can notify people. If something's going on around here, you're trying to do that in the alert process. Lockdown is the same thing as hide. Most schools are going to use the term lockdown. Okay? I think they changed the terminology in Polk County a little bit. It used to be a hard lockdown or a soft lockdown. They use a little bit different terminology. Okay? Inform, using any means to, as you're on your way, informing others by some fashion that this is happening. Similar to the alert. Counter is the same thing as fight. Anything you can do is counter that person's objective of hurting you or others. And evacuate is the same thing as run that we talked about. Now, obviously, ALICE is in an order because it's an acronym, ALIC. But I don't want you to leave here believing that, well, Sergeant Powers told me that I always have to run first, hide second, and fight last. That's not what we're telling you here. You're going to have to make the decision on what's the best course of action based upon what's transpiring in front of you. That may mean skipping running and go right to hiding. You don't have time. It may mean that you have to fight first, you knock them down, and then you run and evacuate. Does that make sense to you? Okay, you have to make a decision, but you don't have to start out with one and go to the next one. It's not sequential. Okay, you have to make a decision on what's the best process to use based upon what's happening at the time. Next, sir.
That's me. So what we want you guys to do, obviously we've given you the information on what you need to do. But when you get to that safe location, whether you've run out of the building, obviously you saw in the video, we want you to get further away from the building. Or if you get stuck inside of a room and you have to hide or barricade, you can leave your phone on, allow the 911 operator to listen in to what's going on, especially if the shooter's nearby. We can hear those gunshots going off. You might be able to give that 911 operator some good information and intel that will lead us to where the shooter is. So these are pretty much the easiest things that we can tell you that we need from you. If you call 911 and you're giving information, and we know that we're going to get inundated with a lot of phone calls, but you might be that one person that makes that call that has the information. Don't just think somebody else is going to make that call. If you have that ability, make the phone call. We need to know the location of the shooter. If you know where you last saw the shooter, then call in and say, this is where I last saw the shooter. Because that could give us a timeline. If somebody else then calls us, that means they're moving further into the building or they're moving away from the building. Call us and let us know what information you have. The number of shooters, if there's more than one. Physical description of the shooters, obviously what you remember them wearing. That could change. You know, they could wear an outer layer of clothing and then remove it throughout the process. But whatever you remember them wearing, make sure you let law enforcement know. Number and type of weapons held by the shooter. I am not interested to know, or maybe I am a little bit, because if you do know the difference, good for you. I don't need to know if you know the difference between an AK-47 and an SKS rifle. I need to know if they have a handgun or a long gun. Really simple. Really simple. Because if they have a long gun, then I'm going to respond with a long gun. If they have a handgun, then I'm going to respond with a long gun.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's right.
Real simple for me. I know what I'm bringing with me. So, but those are the important things. I don't need to know if you know what type of weapon it is. Just let me know handgun or long gun. And if you come across people, obviously Sergeant Powers was talking about it a little bit before. If you see people down, if you see people injured or potentially dead in this particular incident, let us know where you saw them. You may know them. If you know them by name, tell us their name and where you last saw them or where you left them. I don't mean to be callous. This is just, it allows us to get to these people quicker and provide them with the aid that they may need.
No.
Oh. The primary goal of law enforcement when we get there is to eliminate the threat. We have got to get to where that shooter is. I am not going to be able to stop and talk to you. I may stop you and get some information from you, gather some intel, but it's going to be quick. I can't have you hesitating. I can't have you crying. I need that information. If you're hesitating, you're crying, I'm moving on to somebody else that can talk to me. I need to know where that shooter is so I can stop them from killing people that you might know. I'm not going to be able to stop and help injured people until the environment is safe. Officers may arrive individually or in teams with tactical equipment. Officers will need to take command of the situation. We're going to yell at you. Who's ever heard of a cop yelling at people? I mean, it's going to happen, okay? We're going to yell at you, maybe a little bit more aggressively in this situation because we're pretty amped up by what we're going into too. This is not something that is going to happen every day. The probability of you being involved in an active shooter incident is very slim. But the fact that it's possible that you could leave here today and go to Publix to get a sandwich, it's possible an ex-employee could walk in there and just start shooting at people. You are now armed with information that you can use to get yourself and maybe other people out of there alive. So because that possibility exists, that's why we're here to give you this information today. Craig? This is usually one of my favorite slides. If you're involved in an active shooter situation, remain calm. Yeah. Remain calm. It's that simple. It's just like saying it. Just, say it to yourself. Remain calm. It's not going to be that easy. It isn't. I mean, let's be honest. It's not. But if you are going to make that phone call to 911, we need you to be under control so we can understand what you're saying. If you do stop a law enforcement officer and want to provide them with information on maybe one of your friends that was injured, then you need to be calm and give us that information. I'm not going to have time to stop and listen to you if you're not composed and able to give us that information. We want you to raise your hands high, keep your hands empty. You saw me earlier stand up behind Sergeant Powers when he was talking about it. Do not run out of the building with your cell phone in your hand. How many of us have heard of law enforcement officers shooting people with cell phones in their hands? I've heard of it. I pay attention. It happens. Don't put yourself in that situation. If I'm looking for a small black handgun and you're running out with a cell phone in your hand, these iPhone 6s are pretty big. Let's be honest, they're pretty big. The phone I have on my hip, there's guns that are smaller than that. Don't put yourself in that situation. Don't have anything in your hands. Nothing in your hands means you're not a threat to me. Keep moving. Do not make any quick movements or grab onto the officer. This is not the time when we are running into the building trying to stop the shooter for you to run and grab onto me and say, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. I love you." My wife will tell you, wherever she is at this point in time, I'm a bit of a hugger. I'll hug it out with you, just not right then. We'll meet up later, all right? Follow officers' instructions. Do not debate with us at that time. If you have information, give it to us, but this is not the time to debate with us whether or not we're going to go into that building and you want to come with us. We're going to tell you to stay out, stay out. Remain at the evacuation point or safe location until cleared by law enforcement. This is a very key point. You may be in a school setting. If you may not know what the evacuation point is not your car and getting in it and leaving. We need you to stay around. If you're an instructor or an administrator at your school, take your classroom to a safe location and make sure that you have all of your students that were there that particular day. Make sure you account for everybody, because if you don't have somebody, then there's that possibility that exists that they could be injured or dead inside that location. God forbid. We do not want that, but if that possibility exists, or if you decide to get in your car and leave, then we've got to track you down. Don't do that. You also may have information to share with law enforcement that we need, so don't leave. Okay? This next video that you're about to see, it's a quick little test in the middle of all this. You're like, oh crap, we're not supposed to be tested today. It's just a little one, it's just a small one. If you have seen the video, don't say anything. If you haven't seen the video, let's see what you can come up with.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
How many? Oh, I heard a 14. 14, I hear 13. 15. Y'all watching the same video? All right, hang on a second. You're about to get the answer. Pay attention, though. Pay attention.
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
There's no laser pointer, but he walked right through the middle.
Remember I talked about earlier being prepared and aware of your surroundings? That's easy to miss, isn't it? You're focused on one thing, and you totally miss the other. I would say that's pretty common. I don't care who you are. These officers here, troopers, myself, we're guilty as the next person.
I missed it.
You get so used to your everyday life that we miss the small things. That's all of us. We're all guilty of that, including myself. But as law enforcement officers, though, we do have training, and we try to make ourselves better at that. But we fail sometimes. We miss the little things, and that gets us in trouble on the job. We miss that gun in the back pocket, or we miss the needle or something like that, and we poke ourselves. Or there's a lot of different things. There's small things that catches every one of us. But that's why collectively and individually we need to start trying to be more aware of our surroundings, because this kind of stuff is where the active shooter will poke in there and blend in to begin with, and then all of a sudden it's on. And then you got to play catch up, right? So let's talk about basically moving ourselves in front of the event where we're at today. Preparedness and awareness has to include what Ryan's alluded to several times, training and exercises, okay? Police and law enforcement officials, we do that all the time. That's part of our existence, is we're going to continually train ourselves in whatever aspect of the job that we're doing. We don't just get trained the first time in the police academy and it's all over. You spend a 20-year career knowing what you know. No, your whole career is built on learning, experience, and continual training and getting better and better at whatever job function you're doing. But another aspect, like I said, of preparedness and training, the most effective way to train your employees, well, it could be students, employees, this is again a business setting sometimes, is to actually practice the event and prepare what you would do. So we say employees, but that's students, anybody you can think of, people that you're around. Recognize the sound of gunshots, okay? Even in a law enforcement function, again, our big building is over here, and I help train all of our civilian personnel. What if somebody wanted to come in one of our facilities because they don't like the police or they don't like our sheriff and they want to start shooting it up because they don't like cops? We have a lot of civilian employees in facilities around the county. But, you know, if someone were to come in the main sheriff's office and start shooting, I would guarantee you there's probably a percentage of people in there, of our civilians, would say, what crazy person's in here shooting off fireworks? They know they're going to get fired for that. No, folks, that's not fireworks. No one in their right mind would risk their job to come in and shoot fireworks in there to play a practical joke. Okay, what does the sound of gunshots sound like? It's a little bit different out on the shooting range as it is inside of a building. He and I both shot live fire in a house before. It's a whole different category than being out there on the firing line shooting at a paper target. There's concussion in there, there's pressure waves of the ammunition. It's a whole different aspect, and we learned that on SWAT, but that's the training. So understanding and recognizing the sound of gunshots, and then reacting quickly. Again, there will be some people just freeze up and say, you think there's somebody shooting in here? You think that's really happening? Instead of just immediately going into action and doing what you need to do, whether it be running, hiding, or whatever. The training should cover run, hide, fight. And we tell this to businesses. A lot of them try to come up with that plan, what we're going to do in this situation. We talked about earlier having your evacuation routes, but it's kind of like a fire drill. You actually got to put it into play and practice it. There's no good to come up with, you know, a good plan, and then all of a sudden, the first time you've ever seen it in place is when there's gunfire going on, people screaming, yelling, and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, you're not tearing up stuff, but you're practicing what you think that you're going to do the day of something like this should happen. And then simple, you know, calling 911, going over your mind what you're going to tell the operators, and then your reaction when law enforcement arrives. And that should be pretty simple, keeping your hands up like Ryan said, and moving out as they're moving in.
Detroit.
We're going to show you a video. I don't know which one it is, but
Detroit.
No, I know. You're going to see
It's all of them at the same time.
yeah,
Good luck.
a shooting event that happened at a law enforcement station. And we're going to talk about it right after the video.
Detroit, Michigan. It's business as usual at the 6th Precinct Police Station when a civilian saunters in. His name is Lamar Moore, and he's wanted for allegedly kidnapping and raping a 13-year-old girl. But he's not here to turn himself in. Without warning, Moore pulls a shotgun and opens fire. The buckshot takes one worker down, as the other 3 scramble for cover. But these aren't just office clerks. They're cops. And they've got firepower of their own. Commander Brian Davis and Sergeant Ray Sadie return fire as Moore retreats toward the entrance. But instead of backing down, he launches a second offensive. Moore vaults over the counter. And though he doesn't stick the landing, he's a lot closer to delivering death. The perp blows off 2 of Davis's fingers and knocks away his pistol. Unarmed, he scrambles from the gunman's sights and flings a trash can in defense. But when he crawls into the clear, Moore doesn't pursue. Davis's final shot was a direct hit, delivering a mortal wound. Though their injuries are severe, all 4 officers survived the vicious attack. This wanted fugitive tried to get Detroit PD before they could get him. But if a shootout with cops was his bid to avoid jail time, his plan went off with a bang.
So we've been using this video for a while, and there's 2 main points that I'd like to bring out in this video. Some of us that are already wearing a badge and been in this business for a while, they'll understand hopefully what I'm getting ready to tell you. And then the rest of you are going to have to understand the second point. The first point I want to bring up is, you know, every one of these guys, thank God they're alive, but if cops don't look at other situations involving cops, and we don't learn from it. So we all hate to second, Monday morning quarterback with the terminology and look how and point out things that other cops have done wrong. But if we're not doing that as trainers and people that are understanding our business and trying to learn from other people's potential mistakes, we're remiss if we do that. So as a trainer, I look at this situation and I want to bring out a couple points. The police academy here for Polk State College, it's over 700 hours of law enforcement training, including self-defense, firearms, driving, and all that. And troopers are going to go, they got an extensive academy up in Tallahassee, a great academy, several hundred hours, right? By the time you make it to a law enforcement agency, whether it be a police department, highway patrol, or the sheriff's office, once you get to the sheriff's office after the police academy and those 700 hours, you're going to go through an additional 3 months minimum riding with an FTO. Someone else who's got seniority is going to train you how to do police work. And then you're just going to continue on with that training again and gain your experience. So let's just assume the junior person here in this situation they're running a station there where people can come in and file reports. We'll just say even if they had a minimum of 1 to 2 years, we know one of them is a supervisor, like me as sergeant. It took me 19 years, took him a number of years to make that. So a point of that is every one of these guys have got countless hours of training and experience of being a police officer, a law enforcement officer. And then they're doing their day-to-day activities, duties. I'm sure they're all waiting in there. People would come in that front door, walk up to the counter and give some kind of complaint, and they may have to file some reports or give them paperwork and all that. Their day-to-day duties, running the desk there at that substation. And you saw that gentleman come in, and he's got a shotgun hidden, and he goes over by the Coke machine and goofs around. No attention is really paid to him, and all of a sudden he produces a shotgun, and he gets in an immediate gun battle with the guys that are on duty there. Now, most people in a gun battle, they just hold their ground, and, I shoot at you, you shoot at me, but what does he do? This guy jumps across the counter. I mean, how many people advance on the police? Usually there's a gunfight, they're trying to get away, we're shooting at them, and they're shooting at us. But this guy, he jumps across the counter. So I tell you all that to tell you this. They've had countless hours of training, got a supervisor there and all that, and do you see how they react when confronted immediately with this situation? It's chaotic at best, right? There's nowhere in the police academy or in any police training and all the law enforcement out here that you were trained to do this. Were you ever trained that way? Never. It's like this. All right, you see a target, I want you to get a good stance. When I tell you to draw, you're going to draw. You're going to come up on the target, get your good sight alignment, sight picture, and squeeze the trigger. Never happened, did it? It's not realistic. So my point is this. And again, I'm not talking down on these guys, and I'm glad they're all safe. But I do not believe, as a trainer, and looking at that situation, that they ever sat down together as a group who works that station that day and said, hey, if a guy ever comes in here and starts shooting at us, Jimmy, I want you to jump behind the left counter over here, and I want you to fire at him from this way. Bobby, I want you to jump behind this counter over here, and I want you to fire at him this way, because there's no way he can fire at you and me at the same time. And they had a plan in place where if somebody come in and wanted to shoot him up, what they were going to do about it. They all tried to figure it out immediately right there. And it didn't work out very well. Thank God that it worked out in the end, and in my opinion, God was with them. Somebody was looking out for them. Now, the second part of this is, if you saw that situation, trying to remember in your mind, we saw about every tenet that we went through in the run, hide, fight. There was one officer that immediately took flight and got out of there and left his buddies to figure out what's going to happen there. One guy took a couple of shots. He started out in fight mode, and then he doubled out of there and got out of there. If you look behind the desk, one guy, he skipped evacuate and fight, went right to hide. He hid behind the desk and laid there in a fetal position. And you got one guy who went immediately to fight, and it's him and the gunman just going at it. You saw it over there. Here he was face to face with a shotgun, and he's with his handgun, and he got his fingers blown off and dropped his gun. He didn't quit. He had nothing else going on, but he continued that fight pattern. He wasn't giving up. He was going home that night. And he threw a trash can. If that's all he had, remember I talked about if you got nothing else, throw something at him. He threw the trash can at him. So the point is this. If we're trained and it can still look like this, what do you think the average person's response is when confronted with this situation? You're not trained for this kind of stuff. The average citizen out there is not trained to respond to someone coming in and shooting at them. There's no possible way as a trainer. I've trained a bunch of cops, and I see them in a stressful situation, and I know they've been trained, and we put them in active shooter response training at the school at Lake Region, and I've watched deputies do a lot of crazy stuff that I know we never trained them because they're induced with fear, and they've never seen this particular situation before. And they do a lot of stuff that they never thought they would do and react because they really believe they're in it. We do paint bullet fighting. But your mind, I'm telling you right now, if you've never thought about what you would do in this situation or practiced it or had some kind of training, your mind is not going to be able to process what's going on fast enough for you to make the best decision. Someone's put it, you're going to do something. Is that something going to be enough to help you out in that situation? Or will it just be conflicting with what you ought to be doing? Run, hide, and fight. Okay? So you have to think about it ahead of time. What am I going to do in this situation? Come up with that kind of plan wherever you're at, and then you practice that plan. So that's what we do as cops, law enforcement officers. We practice what we're going to do in that response to that motorist who's doing something. What are we going to do if this happens? We play that what-if game a lot. If I show up to this 7-Eleven or this Circle K, and I park over here, and as I'm walking up to the store, a guy comes running out who just robbed the store, what am I going to do here? I've already got that in my mind. I kind of got a plan what's going to happen when I get up there. Or I'm responding to that hot call, and I'm running lights and siren and listening to the dispatcher. I'm still coming up with my plan. All right, how am I going to approach? Where am I going to park? What am I going to do when I get up there? Are they going to come out shooting, or are they just going to be there on the side of the road? What's going to happen? So you've got to do that up front. You've got to be somewhat prepared mentally and have trained in it, or you're not going to be able to make the best decisions that you should.
My wife just gave me the 10-minute warning, so she's the boss today and every day. So I'm going to try to speed through the rest of this. Talk about managing the consequences after a particular incident like this unfolds in front of you. After the active shooter has been eliminated and is no longer a threat, administrators, those of you that have leadership roles in ROTC, leadership roles in your school as well, you guys are probably going to be tasked with certain responsibilities and trying to help deal with what has just taken place. Some of those things we're going to need to start accounting for all the individuals that are supposed to be in your class. You're going to be able to help out your teachers and say, hey, we're missing Johnny. That's not good. I thought I saw him fall. We're missing Johnny. And you may have to be the one that tells that administrator that something bad happened. So we've got to then start putting a plan into place to finding these missing and injured people. So you're going to play an important role in that. Determining a method of notifying families or individuals affected by the active shooter. I implore you to not get on someone's Facebook page, to not text their family members, to not call them and say, hey, I just saw Johnny get shot at school. That is not fair to that family. Because now that family is going to be driving at a high rate of speed trying to get to that location, and they could cause more harm than good by getting there. They're going to be in an emotional state. Please allow law enforcement to do that job. Find a law enforcement officer and say, hey, I know this person. I saw they were injured. I want to talk to their family. I want to go with you. This was my best friend, or this is my cousin, or whoever it may be. That's how you can help us. But please do not get on Facebook. Do not text the family members and say, this is what just happened. Because you're going to have a whole lot of law enforcement, fire, and EMS personnel responding to that scene. If we have families and everything else responding there, they're going to slow our response time to getting these people help. So please do not do that. Assessing the psychological state of individuals at the scene and referring them to healthcare specialists. Okay, I understand that a majority of the people in this room are very young, and you probably don't understand this aspect of it. I'm going to give you an example that comes from my professional life. Sergeant Powers and I were at the scene when Matt Williams and his canine DOG were killed in 2006. The 10-year anniversary is this September. I was the first one to Matt in the woods. I'm the one that found him. This is something that I have to live with on a day-to-day basis. Those images still appear in my head from time to time. Every time, as a matter of fact, that I talk about this, I get those images. And my wife can tell you that in the days following that particular incident, I could not take my eyes off of the TV. I had to watch every bit of the news coverage from that incident. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried. And a lot of people would think he's a SWAT guy. That perception. Nothing should affect him. He's a SWAT guy. It shouldn't affect you. I can promise you I'm as human can be. And it got to me. But I'm sure Sergeant Powers can agree. We were all getting phone calls from family and friends following that incident to check on us and tell us what a great job we had done. Well, that's all well and good. And I encourage you to talk to somebody. Talk to your family. Talk to your friends. But what I'm also going to tell you is a lot of the times when you talk to your family and friends about these incidents, they're going to tell you what you want to hear. If you have to step outside of yourself, like I did, and talk to somebody that is going to tell you what you need to hear, and that might be a mental health professional, I implore you to talk to someone. Do not keep this stuff in. It will get after you, and it will control you. Don't allow it to do it. Talk to somebody. Good.
All right, let's do a quick recap, and we're going to be finishing up. Again, pay attention to your surroundings, please. From this day forward, I hope you take something out of this message and you start being more aware of your surroundings. Be aware of emergency exits, a route, how you're going to get out of somewhere, even if it's a fire or a potential bad situation anywhere that you're at. If faced with an active shooter situation, try to run if you can. If you can't, hide and fight, whichever one you need to as last resort. And again, when law enforcement arrives, keep your hands raised and do exactly as instructed. Folks, we appreciate your time. We thank, again, the administrators for allowing us to come speak to you. We really, if you can't tell, we're passionate about this subject. We're doing our best to get this information out as best we can through at least this county and the people that we get a chance to talk to. And this kind of sums it up right here, okay? It's going to be for all of us, whether you're already in the business or not. In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. That's what we hope for, right? The next best thing you can do is the wrong thing. That's going to happen a lot of times. But the worst thing you can do is nothing. Okay? And just not do anything. That's a lot just in life, period, folks. Stand up for something. Be prepared. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with your life? Are you going to be a leader, or are you just going to sit there?
Questions?
Next slide.
That's it.
All right, so this concludes our presentation. I don't know what kind of time we have for any questions, or are we moving right along?
We're moving right along.
All right. Thank you, guys.